Welcome to the Drop-In CEO podcast. I'm Deb Coviello, and as the Drop-In CEO, I drop into businesses and assume the CEO role to mitigate crises and help teams get back on track. This podcast is about helping the C-suite leader to navigate challenges with confidence. For today's leader, I'm here to help you get back on track. Tomorrow's leader, let me partner with you to learn the secrets of the C-suite. Wherever you're at in your career, this is the podcast for you. Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO. And as always, I'm excited that you've joined us for another episode of the program where week after week, I speak to the most amazing leaders who share their insights with you. And just know I do this work because I sincerely care about partnering with C-suite leaders of tomorrow to help you navigate your challenges with confidence. And this week, I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming onto the show Steve Durbin, who is the CEO of Information Security Forum. He is an expert in leadership, business culture, transformation, and cyber strategies for today's top entrepreneur. And so he's got an amazing backstory. I'm not going to go more into it, but I am going to just say, Steve, thank you so much for dropping in on the show.
No, lovely to be here, Deb. Thanks for having me.
So to my audience, I have the great pleasure of being introduced to Steve because he's got an amazing background of what he does. And I think it's a really important topic in the area of cybersecurity, where we as leaders need to understand what are the challenges, what are the opportunities and strategies. And Steve is going to be that go-to expert. But before I talk any further, Steve, I would love to hand the mic over to you and share a little bit about your story.
Sure. It's interesting, you talk about me being a leader in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity was something that I came to purely by chance. My background is not in that industry at all. At university, I was very keen on languages, particularly literature. So that's how I started. And I realized probably at the end of doing my degree course that there probably wasn't too much demand for somebody who could tell you everything there was to know about Flaubert and Stendhal and Balzac, but actually had never used a calculator and didn't know how to fill out an expense form. So I moved into technology, and I worked in the City of London for a while before discovering that actually that was a little bit boring, and I wanted to work much more closely with people. I did a marketing degree and moved into consultancy. And from there, spent my time building out consultancy firms. I was at Gartner for a number of years. I finished up being a senior vice president there, running their consultancy operations around the world. And then was really attracted to working much more with entrepreneurs. And so I went to Ernst & Young, EY, and I looked after their entrepreneurial program and clients across Europe, Middle East, Africa. So working with high net worth individuals like, Kylie Minogue, Elton John, Paul McCartney, those sorts of people. And also businesses that were going from fledgling status to really rapid growth across wide range of industries. And so doing a lot of M&A as well. So that was fascinating. And then one day I was approached by somebody who asked me if I'd ever thought about moving into information security, as we called it then. And I'd never really heard of it. I'd never come across it. But it was presented to me as a sort of an opportunity to do a bit of a business turnaround. And that really appealed to me. So I joined the ISF, and here we are 16, 17 years later, and I'm still here, and I'm now the CEO. So a slightly different route into cyber, but one I hope that's going to become much more common as we go forward and as the industry matures, because certainly I think the industry needs people who've got a broader understanding of some of the technology and security issues, rather than just coming up from the technological background, which is the traditional route into cyber.
So this is fascinating. Your career has gone in many different directions, but I always like to go through a little bit of that sequencing then. Now, you said that you studied literature and couldn't find a real application for it. But sometimes what we study is more about, that deeper understanding, curiosity, your passion. What was it about literature that still sticks with you maybe today? Maybe there's a creative side that we haven't recognized.
Yeah, I mean, I love reading, and I think that's always been something that has been not just a source of pleasure and enjoyment, but also an escape. And I think that's hugely important. We live in a world where we're constantly on. Technology has sort of taken over, and I think that so for me, reading is a form of escapism. It also allows me to think, which again I think is hugely important in the kind of role that I have. And so, having started out by really sort of immersing myself in that, and I had a particular love of French 19th and 17th century literature. That I've moved on from that. I've now joined the 21st century, but that sort of I'm always interested in reading, always interested in learning. I was really fortunate in my sort of early part of my career. I used to travel around the world a tremendous amount, and certainly when I'd go to places like Japan or China, I would always try to hit the airport bookshop beforehand and buy something that would give me some kind of insight into the culture that I was going to sort of be visiting. And then, of course, if you're on a long haul, you've got plenty of time to read the book, and you step off the other end knowing a little bit more than perhaps when you stepped onto the aircraft. So that's really why I've I suppose still continued in that vein. And again, I've sort of transitioned from books, paper. I've been through the whole technology, Kindle, all that kind of stuff, and now I'm back with the real stuff. So now I go back to the feel, the smell of the paper, which again I think provides you with a different perspective, and is a nice break from the screen.
And I love what you share about that. And I like to dig deep into one's backstory because sometimes when we talk about these shifts or pivots in our career, there's something at the origin of who we once were. And is there a thread that goes all the way through? Similarly for me, yes, I have a love for reading, but I also have a love for writing as well. And that is escape as well. Hence why we do these podcasts, because the preparation, the research, the writing, the creating the content together fuels my soul. So every opportunity I have a chance to learn about somebody else and share it with others, that medium is really who we are. And we should never forget, regardless of what it is that we do from a transactional perspective, to earn money, be in service to others, never forget who we are because it may be what makes us best. So I just wanted to go, you went from literature into technology.
Yeah.
You made it happen so seamlessly. Oh, I just went over into technology. But what drew you there? Was it a good job? You had a buddy over there. What was it that made that transition? Because I was very much into the arts. And then I flipped over to science and engineering. And I think I've actually gone back again. So tell me a little bit more about that shift.
It was a fairly sort of analytical shift, if you like. I'd sort of realized that it probably didn't matter what job I ended up doing. There was always going to be some element of technology involved in it, right? And so, leaving university and not having experienced anything really in that space, I looked for an organization that had a really good graduate training program in the technology area, so that I would at least, if I hated it, be able to come out at the end of that knowing how to make use of this of technology, and then I could take that into something else that appealed to me. So it was not a significant conscious decision to move into. I didn't wake up one morning and go, "Wow, technology, that's for me. Yeah, here we go." And it was more of a sort of voyage of discovery, which is pretty much how my career has evolved anyway. I like trying different things. I don't like rules. I like to break them. Um, like challenge. I like, trying to do something different. And that was really how I moved into that. But I was really fortunate to end up working with a bunch of people who were pretty exceptional in their own rights, in terms of the way that they were able to work with the client base, get messages across about what technology could be used for, how it could be used. I worked in the financial services space, so that was obviously a very fast moving area as well. And I listened. I watched what other people did, what they did well, what they did not so well, and tried to learn from that. And that was really how I started out, from a sort of first few years in a technology career.
Yeah, so again, the thread continues. You're an avid learner. You're not necessarily just studying what is in the written form, but studying people
Yeah,
and studying
absolutely.
new skills and pushing you a little bit outside your comfort zone. I know that for many years, I was in the electronics manufacturing sector for about 15 years. I stepped away when I had my third child, but when I stepped back in, I had a lot of skills, but I wound up in the chemical industry, in the flavor and fragrance, knew nothing of it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes leaders shy away from something different because they say they don't have that experience. On the other hand, you at least had the curiosity. You trusted yourself to figure things out, and being able to leap into a new career, a new area, is a source of growth, can get you out of being stuck and being bored. And just know that, you had to figure it out once before jumping into a totally new field. You're capable. And again, you obviously wanted to do something different and were obviously very successful at it.
Yeah, I think, Deb, the other thing is that I would say, you bring a fresh perspective. Far too often in business, people keep doing the same old thing. And I think if you are naturally curious, if you're a bit of a rule breaker, then you're always going to want to try to do something different. And so being able to draw on experience in other industries, other areas, that you bring something that is special, something that is different.
Yeah.
And as I say, I made the point that I was lucky to work with a bunch of people who not only taught me a lot, but also were prepared to entertain different ideas,
Mm.
different approaches. And I think that's something that every leader needs to constantly keep at the back of their mind. We don't have all the answers. We need to create an environment for people to excel by trying different things. And most of us, you know, don't work in industries where a mistake results in catastrophic failure. And it's all about how you manage some of those risks, but creating that environment to try something different, something that hasn't been done before, I think is really valuable. And that's something certainly that I've always valued in organizations I've worked for, and have tried to create in ones that I've had the ability to run.
So this is why you and I are getting along just fine, because I too, again, I was a process person. I had an engineering background. I was celebrated for going in and setting up standards and processes and not break the rules, auditing for consistency. So you protect a brand, you protect people.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I too, in consultancy now, have the fresh perspective. I drop into businesses and I see what there is, and then I offer a fresh perspective. I like breaking rules now. I like getting people to look at things differently. I think that's why I don't fit into corporate anymore.
Yeah.
But by dropping into different situations, my perspective is different and valued, and sometimes wakes people up from what they were always doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
One more question. You said that you wound up, or you sincerely enjoy working with entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that transition, and what is it about us demographic that you really, really enjoy?
I think there's a number of things that most entrepreneurs always see opportunity. They're an incredibly positive bunch of people. You have to be.
Yep.
Otherwise, you would never be an entrepreneur. Um, so, every setback is an opportunity. I think they also have the drive and passion. And so, I've worked with a lot of them all around the world, and it's that sort of common theme that they all have. They're passionate about what they do, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be making coffee, it could be running film studios, it could be running an insurance company from the ground up. They've all had a passion to do something different, to create, to break the norm. I'm not going to say break the rules, because I've worked with people in regulated industries and that doesn't go down too well. But to just, stress test things all the time. And the best ones, they're difficult. They are difficult people to work with, because they're hugely demanding and they set very high standards, but that brings out the best in the people who are able to work with them. And that's what I've always liked about it. I'm not a solid state kind of bloke, I could never work in government, for instance. I have consulted in the past to government, to in the defense industry and some other, and it drove me crazy. Absolutely drove me crazy. Having to follow the processes, the procedures, and I understand why they're there, but that just wasn't for me. So the whole entrepreneurial piece and being able to just observe, learn from people who'd taken businesses from literally, orange boxes in empty rooms and a phone to very large scale global businesses, and still have that kind of passion and drive was a huge part, I think, of my business education, and probably more valuable than any MBA or business course that you could ever go on.
I appreciate that, because I have not gotten an MBA, but I am passionate about what I am doing. The podcasting, that'll be the last thing that I ever shut down if I ever shut down this business. And positive, very, very positive. I appreciate that validation, because again, as an entrepreneur, I see the future and I am racing towards it. And I appreciate people like you that appreciate people like me. Well, I want to shine a light on your work now at the Information Security Forum as a CEO. I want to educate our audience, and I would love to know if you could share a bit about current technology developments that are impacting businesses. I think this is a great opportunity to impart some new insights for my audience.
Yeah, sure. So the Information Security Forum, ISF, it's really dedicated to a very, very specific niche in the market, which is information security and risk management. We are a not-for-profit organization. So we've been around now for over 35 years, which again is very unusual in that space. So if you roll things back 35 years, you imagine what not just the security space, but the tech space was like at that point. I don't even remember what it was like, sort of coming into that. But it bears no resemblance to where we are today. That's the point. And so that longevity must be for a reason. And the reason is that we work with some of the smartest companies in the world. Over half of our members are Forbes and Fortune companies. We work with organizations that are in the government sector, that are in every other vertical sector that you can imagine. From airlines through to manufacturing and retail and financial services and you name it, we've probably got a member in that particular space. And we work collaboratively with them and with the membership group around the world to try to identify risk, to try to identify ways in which they can manage cyber risk. And we provide them with not just research, but provide them with tools, with insights, and also consultancy services that allow us to work on some really, leading edge projects, all geared around how we can continue to operate our businesses effectively, safely, in a resilient manner, in a world that is dominated by technology, where data is described as being the new oil, gold, call it what you will, and where data clearly has a value. And that means that people will want to destroy it, will want to steal it, will want to use it, will want to change it. And so our job, working with our members, is trying to make sure that the good guys stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
What do you see as the biggest challenge when maybe a client approaches you? Is it in, inadequate systems platforms and their technology, or is maybe there a mindset component that has to be dealt with as well? They come to you ready and say, okay, help me fix everything. Or do you have to work with them a little bit to say, hey, if you want to be a viable business 10, 20, 30 years from now, you need to shift your thinking and make the investment. So I'm wondering how much time is working on the leadership and how much
Mhm.
is actually doing the strategy and the technical work.
Yeah, I think that'd be one of the biggest changes that we've seen in the industry over the recent past. Um, if you rolled it back, I don't know, 10 years, I would have said that security was very much about the technology. It was about really understanding that the platforms, the software, the basics of technology. What has happened much more recently, of course, is that because technology has really become a core component in any business, we're doing this using technology. We wouldn't have been able to do this, or it wouldn't have been as readily accepted pre-COVID. I mean, that's the reality, right? So we're only rolling it back a few years, and so now, because it's so central to everything that we do, the challenge for the security professional is how do you convey some fairly complex messages to business leaders, chief executives, boards, so that they are best equipped to make the right decision around where they ought to be investing in technology and security, because that impacts the way in which the business strategy is going to be rolled out successfully. We've had all sorts in the recent past of challenges around supply chain. So supply chains have been hit not just because of the war in the Ukraine, more recently in the Middle East. We're seeing a whole range of different challenges from China, and of course in the United States, we've now got discussions around tariffs and what supply chains might look like under the new administration. So, what's that got to do with technology and security? Well, those are the enablers that help businesses actually go about doing what they normally do, delivering shareholder value, right? Moving into new areas, whether that be product or whether it be geography. And so this combination of geopolitics, of technology, of security, in a world where social media rules, where misinformation and disinformation are sort of daily words that we talk about. These are all the sorts of things that are buzzing around out there. And for a lot of businesses, that can be quite overwhelming. Where do you start?
So what I'm getting from this, it isn't about the technology. It's just an assumption that there is technology or there's technology being developed to do whatever we need to preserve data, manage data, protect it, etc. But it's about that mindset of a leader to be prudent, to make the investment, to feel confident that they've partnered with somebody like you that will guide them in an ever changing landscape. Because I think the bigger problem is it's constantly changing. So the technology has to change. And then leaders, like you say, are confused. Should I? Shouldn't I? I have no idea. And even if I invest now, is it going to change again? Because of
Yeah,
a new socioeconomical challenge in the universe. Oh my
that's
God.
absolutely right. And, if we look at artificial intelligence, that would be a good example. AI has been around for quite a number of years. We've had large language models around. And yet, the thing that really brought it alive for most boards was ChatGPT. That was the thing. And what did that look like? How much money should I be investing? Is it going to take over the world? We've got all sorts of debates going on around that. If you scale it all back and you look at it from a business perspective, what should the business leader be doing about AI? Well, it depends on the industry that you're in. If you're in the medical space and you're producing medical devices, then you'll have a different approach than if you're in the retail sector or financial services. But the point is, you need to figure out what role artificial intelligence can play in your overall business strategy, how it can help you achieve your business goals. AI lives off data. So you have to make sure that you can protect that data, that it maintains integrity, that it maintains confidentiality, that it is available when you need to use it. Those are all security-based terms. And so this intertwining, this sort of intermeshing, if you like, of the business world with the technology world, with new innovation. These are all the sorts of things that need to be really thrashed out and explained within the context of what your business is trying to do. Very often people will say to me, how much should I be spending on security or on technology? And the answer to that is, well, how long's a piece of string? What are you trying to do? What is the value that you're looking to derive from these? And we come back to fairly basic business principles. It's about return on investment. Now, security people, by the way, hate me saying that, because they will tell you that it's very difficult to measure. How do you measure the fact that we haven't had a breach? From a business perspective, no, you have to be able to talk about it in an ROI world. That's the world in which the business leader operates. And if you can't do that, then you better learn how to do it pretty damn quick, because otherwise you're going to be left behind. So trying to bring all of these different components together is a really fascinating exploration, I think, of where technology is going, where business is naturally morphing towards as well, and helping business leaders to understand that, helping security leaders to understand that, helping just ordinary people who work in organizations understand why it's important to remain aware, why it's important to have a good level of security, hygiene, and resilience in everything that you do is a massive part of what we do. And that's brought us back to people. And, people are great, except when they're not.
This whole thing is enormous, as I think, first of all, as you describe it, and you describe the different pieces and questions and mindfulness that we shall have. It is overwhelming. It is amorphous, because even if you could break all the considerations down to mitigate risk or be aware of risk into tangible work streams or things like that, it's ever changing. So I feel when I'm talking to you, it's an amorphous environment. I see many different circles that are constantly changing. The level of intersection is 100% overlap or partial. And I think the great strength, what I'm hearing you do, is being able to make it like paint a picture. Be able to tell a story, because one of the things that you triggered for me is we may not have, for instance, in my world, food safety. We may not have had a food safety issue that has resulted in a recall. So leaders play the dice and say, well, let's not invest now. We'll wait till next year's budget to invest in the things that we know are right to prevent lethality getting to humans in the supply chain. But then you could always do a comparable to all of those who have not heeded that. And when the planets lined up and bad things happen, you can talk about the millions and billions of dollars lost due to loss of trust, loss of the brand, loss of lives, possibly in the process, and use that to tell the story to help leaders be more educated and making the right decisions as a matter of prevention versus reacting.
I think that's absolutely right, Deb. You're spot on. And the good news in my industry is that the world has shifted. I also participate in a course that's run by Henley Business School, their board development program. And I've done that for a number of years. And when I started, my pitch to board directors coming through the program was explaining what security was. Now the conversation is very much more around risk management, around what should they be doing, how might they be doing it. And so the good news in my industry is that people at least have become more educated. They understand some of the implications of things going wrong, and we probably have to thank some of the very large breaches and malware attacks for that, in terms of raising that level of awareness, because without it, we simply wouldn't be at the stage that we're at today. And we're by no means, at the end point, because technology continues to change and move so rapidly, which again is one of the reasons why I think, anyone listening to this who's considering a career in this particular space, if you're naturally inquisitive, if you don't like the status quo and want to be challenged on an ongoing basis, then this is a pretty good industry to get into.
Wonderfully said. And I'd love to just ask a quick question about, given that your consultancy has a plethora of knowledge. And anybody out there that has concerns or is gaining an awareness that they may need to do something differently, even if they don't take the decision to work with you or somebody in your space, what are some things that leaders should be thinking about or doing now to mitigate some of the risk in their information or cybersecurity? What can they do now, even before they engage with somebody like you?
Yeah, I think that the good news is that if they can step away from this sort of oh, that's technology, or oh, that's security, and just think about it within whatever business area they're in, right? I'll give you a specific example of what I'm talking about here. So probably for about the last 18 months, I think one of the most common pieces of work that we've done is running cyber simulation exercises with organizations, boards, teams in companies all around the world. That is a rehearsal of the day that you hope never comes when something goes wrong. Now, let's take technology out of it. People have been doing that in most industries forever, right? So it's a well-trodden path. So I think don't assume that because you're talking about some shiny new element of technology or security or whatever it might be, that you have to abandon everything you've done in the past. Think about how you can migrate and use some of that experience within the organization that you've gathered and just apply it in a slightly different way. I think that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I would say is that and I've made this point already on the show, that we operate in a very, very fast-moving space. So learn about it. Listen, there's no shortage of podcasts, webinars, material that you can, get hold of. Not just from my own organization, although there's a wealth of materials that people can access there for free. But there's just no shortage of it. And so that's the second thing, educate, right? Continually educate yourself, be curious. And then the third thing is about network, about people. I've always learned most from peers, from listening, watching, meeting people. And I think that one of the real tragedies of the pandemic era was that for a lot of people, that became something that's alien. We're not used to seeing people, not used to getting together, to observing people, because we were all locked up and we had to do everything by screen. And so, breaking out into some of the networks that are out there, into some of the conferences, some of the general meetups that take place, that's a hugely valuable way of just gaining more insight into what other people are doing. You may not adopt some of the practices that they have, but at least you can hear what other people are doing, and then you can make a decision as whether it's right for you or maybe you want to do something different. But don't be afraid to just get involved. So a whole range of different things that you can do, looking back in your own experience within your organization, continually educate, and just meet and talk to people about some of the challenges they're overcoming.
And all of this is easy to do and is free. So there's no reason why a CEO or C-suite leaders can't take just the time, as you said, think. Reading is a good way to think and take time and help your people through the change. They hate change, but if we can migrate or evolve existing resources. I mean, I know I do audits, but there are different ways to do audits to be able to see more risks than just the tried and true methods, education and networking, because the worst thing to do is try to find those resources when you're having a situation, but better to build up that network and trusted partners in advance. Reaching out to Steve on the cybersecurity, get to know him, because worst thing to have happen is you're that one that winds up in the news because you weren't properly prepared. And
that
Steve,
is not a place that you want to be, and nobody will thank you for that.
Well, what I'm taking away from this conversation, again, our listeners get to listen to me, just getting to know you. When it comes to a scary space, the way you talk and the way you share, it's very calm and very confident. And because I'm sure you've been thrown into some very tough situations where the sky is falling and bad things are happening. I am curious, how do you maintain your calm and composure during times of crisis?
I don't know is the honest answer. It's not something that I think, having said that, if I go way back to when I first started out, I worked at a large insurance company, and I worked with one individual who, Derek, his name was, and he was. I think I sort of learned some of that from Derek, because whenever things went wrong, he just sat back and he just thought it through while everybody was just, about to panic and, head for the hills. Derek would always just sort of sit back and say, okay, well, let's just look at it. Let's just figure it. Let's just think about how we're going to react. What is it going to be? And that sort of calming influence suddenly brought everybody back on side. And so it wasn't something that I consciously did, but actually, if you were to ask me who I sort of probably learned the most from, that I still use today, it would be him, because he just, I suppose, he didn't teach me. He just did it, and I thought that's a really cool way of managing not just conflict but challenge and all of those things. So that's probably where it has come from, yeah,
it just comes through very much so. So, if nothing else for my listeners, Steve's calming voice is assurance that you could get through some of these challenges and amidst an ever-changing environment and complexity. But this has been a fantastic interview. I'm educated. I have more perspective because I drop into situations with CEOs and C-suite leaders, work with them on certain business issues, but very often they will say, Deb, do you know somebody? I've been concerned about my security, my cybersecurity. So again, this is not a one and done. This is you and me building out our network. So I would love to give you the mic one last time for any closing thoughts or how people can connect with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and Deb, it's been a really great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I've touched on a whole range of different ways in which the Information Security Forum can help organizations. And, if anyone does want to follow up in any way or wants to get a hold of me and maybe disagree with some of the things that I've been saying, that's okay as well. Then I'm very easy to get hold of. I'm on LinkedIn. And I do respond to people, which is just thought I'd say that. But also by going to my company's website, securityforum.org, you can easily access my other details in terms of phone number and email and all of that good stuff. And, I'm very happy to have conversations with people who are perhaps finding this whole space a little bit challenging, a little bit tricky. And I'm always keen to hear from those that think they've really nailed it as well, because it's all about learning. And I don't think that any of us have got the answer yet. So I'd encourage anybody who's listening that has a view to just reach out and we can continue a conversation about it.
I love that. Let's just have a conversation as a starting point. Build some human connection before we worry about the transaction. So singing to my heart. So Steve, I just want to say thank you so much for dropping in on the show and being a fantastic guest. And I just want to wish you well and the people at Security Forum much success. And thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for listening to the Drop-In CEO podcast. I hope you are inspired by our conversation and can apply what you heard to your business or career goals. If you found this valuable, please share this show with at least one friend who will find it useful and inspiring. When you share this podcast, it allows me to continue to help C-suite leaders of today and tomorrow to navigate their challenges with confidence. To connect with me or learn more about the Drop-In CEO services, go to my website at dropinceo.com. And until we meet, I wish you well and much success.